covering this part of the circuit, and he's got a lot of spray there as he goes under the bridge. This is where it's hard to slow it down. Improvement once again from Fernando Alonso. That's experience there from Alonso compared to Piastri. Piastri, without a lot of experience, driving the Formula 1 car in the wet. Fernando knows that if you can put on an Inter and get it working, the time will come, and he is going quite quickly. Hulkenberg going down to the top of the times, and they're ever tumbling. 7/10 now clear of Ocon, and Alonso had the intermediate working.
Do you want to try?
El primer sector para él, todos los parciales están en verde, muchos morados, se le ha ido muchísimo,
derrapando. El intermedio ya no tiene esa diferencia de tamaño tan grande que tiene el de agua. Cuando metemos el neumático de agua, ponemos el intermedio aquí.
It's just a scary thought when you're a rookie on a circuit like this to go for a tyre that can only clear half a bathtub of water compared to the full bathtub. So what's that per second? Per second.
A veces lo hemos explicado, el cambio de agua a Inter lo podemos decir los ingenieros. Y con la confirmación del piloto, cuando ves los tiempos que se aparecen al crossover que decíamos que era un 1.29, vemos que ahora estamos en el 1.30, ya estamos cerca. Ya estamos cerca. Está claro que alguien con una buena vuelta podría ponerse su nueva intermedio con un 1.30 también. Ya dentro de poco un intermedio
on his work. 18 cars out on circuit, only the Mercedes in the garage right now. Early turn in Preston and Ocon all over that second apex, sideways, and again at higher speed, that'll pitch him into the wall, but at low speed you can save it, and he drives to the top of the times again, still on the full wet. Let's look at Alonso's sector times, fastest sector one, okay, he's made it successfully through 8 and 9, he was deep in last time, he's all over the curve, watching him, made his way through turn 9, he successfully got through there, so let's see if he loses anything, there's a lot of standing water on the exit of the hairpin, and once again Alonso looking quick on the inters, but can't find a clean lap, and this is the debate that they're having between the Inter and Wet. The Inter's so much quicker though, he's 7/10 quicker than Sainz in the first sector. Sainz also on an Inter actually, so he's 7/10 quicker than Perez in the first sector, who's just come through, 6/10 quicker than Perez in the middle sector, and these are the guys quickest at the moment on the full wet. So if Fernando can get it stopped and actually complete a lap, then he's going to flip the field. The intermediate is better, but he's just trying to get the most out of it.
Se pone primero a pesar de todo, viene pintando el morado Fernando todos los sectores, está en la recta de atrás, Carlos 1.35 con intermedio. Subidos ahora en el coche de Fernando, le falta la chicane, la última, la de entrada en la línea de meta y alguien delante, se ven las luces a lo lejos, se va a Pirley, se la come Fernando.
It looks to me that the intermediate is quick around the entire lap, bar 2 spots. Once one is the cockpit, where it's just a little bit too much standing water, with too many bathtubs, a bit more of a bathtub conditions down at the hairpin. And the other point is turn 13, which is what we just saw. Fernando Alonso slotting on, it's just a bit too much standing water for it to get into both. But that's going to change pretty rapidly.
Recordemos que claro, mañana la predicción del tiempo es que va a ser seco, por lo tanto todo lo que estáis viendo ahora pues es con carga aerodinámica para clasificación pensando mañana, es decir, poca carga, ¿no? En circunstancias de lluvia lo que haría es aquí poner el alerón en mucha carga para evitar aguaplán y para poder frenar, para poder hacer que el neumático funcione, porque uno de los problemas ahora que Fernando tiene con el neumático.
Lance Stroll took his only Formula 1 pole position on a day in Turkey where some cars could not get their tyres to switch on in mixed conditions. The Racing Point could, he took his maiden pole back in 2020. He's on the intermediate tyre. Charles Leclerc's gone over the line and done the second fastest time on the Inter. Max Verstappen is fastest of anyone out there. Lock up the Stroll to go deep into turn 10. Another wet part of the circuit. You can see there's a river that runs across the track. He's wading his way through. He stands on the loud pedal, middle sector, intermediate tyre, and it's now an Inter time. That's the fastest time.
Okay, I did hit the curb a bit, so yeah, left hand side of the floor touched the big sausage.
Yeah, copy that. So we'll be having a look.
Stroll comes through behind the bollard and can come back on, so he's not made it through that final sector. He's surely, as a driver, that's going to hope that this rain stays around. Lance has been very good in wet conditions, not only with that pole position in Turkey, but through his whole career. Remember when he first came in, Williams, and he was on the front row in Monza. He's always had form in the wet. Home race for him as well. Not had the season that he would have really wanted so far. It's been all about this man, his teammate, Fernando Alonso. And Stroll could do with a bit of a standout result on home turf. And the wet is probably his best chance in a car. This Aston Martin has got great traction, and that's what is such an asset in the wet. Some drivers really struggling out of that corner, and Alonso's just able to squeeze on the throttle, and he'll go miles to the top of the times here. Finally hooks one up, 1.4 seconds clear of Bottas. Wet track, Aston Martin maybe can come towards the 4, as Alonso was doing well in Monaco as well, let's not forget. That could be anyone's best chance of stopping Red Bull.
Lance Stroll's doing okay, but we haven't really seen it because he keeps scooting off at the final corner, and that's costing him lap time. But he's actually...
Oh, another one for Yuki Tsunoda. Round he goes. Loving the packed grandstand's reaction to that one. And he rejoins a few metres away from where he exited the Grand Prix 1 year ago.
That is one loose rear end, isn't it, on the AlphaTauri, both at really low speed, and that's a kind of nothing.
Yeah, the tyre is starting to work step by step.
You are currently fastest.
That's where all your G's are, and your decelerations, your braking and turning, and the tricky parts.
So the interrunner's getting faster and faster, though the rain does look to be picking up.
So Perez on the Inter now is just being informed that there will be grip out there, but there wasn't for Tsunoda. Yeah, just turned it into that right-hander, and the rear flipped around.
Sainz, who found himself in a good battle with Fernando Alonso here last year in qualifying in mixed conditions, once again battling with Alonso, who is just easing off and back to the pits for the two-time world champion, who finds himself coming to the pit lane. Sainz, Alonso, Bottas, who announced himself in Formula 1 with third place on the grid here in his early Williams days, was P3. Now we need to finish that story before Hulkenberg manages to pop up to third. Times are changing down in the pit lane. Laura has made her way to Mercedes.
Yeah, I have indeed. I've just been watching what the mechanics, what the Mercedes team are doing to Lewis's car. You'll notice it looks remarkably dry, and that's because the mechanics spent a good deal of time actually drying it off before it's about to go out onto the track and get wet again. It looks like there's just some perhaps updates, some tweaks being done at the back of the car there. Look like suspension from where I am standing just outside the garage. Lewis Hamilton's still in the car and no one looking particularly urgent, so I believe all systems go as he is about to go out. We're being pushed over to one side. Jolien, just as Lewis Hamilton heads out, a question's come in for you on hashtag F1 Live from Sean, asking where does the water that enters the cockpit go? And I think you're probably, of all of us, best placed to answer that one.
You never get particularly wet in the cockpit when you're driving, because I think you're moving so quick that most of it's just going straight over the top of you, and then I guess it just sort of drip out from the underneath side somewhere. But it was when you're sitting at the end of the pit lane, for example, when you're waiting for a green light, and often in these conditions you want to be having the track position if it's qualifying, so you go down up to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes even before the green light, and then you're sitting stationary. That's when you start to feel like you're getting wet. When you're flying around, as Hulkenberg is right now, you're not actually collecting that much water in the cockpit. I think the angles are pretty good, and you're travelling so quick that you never particularly noticed it.
In some series, they drill holes in the cockpit floor to let the rain run out, but actually in Formula 1 that would be too much of an aerodynamic loss to have a hole in the floor. That would just cost you too much from the aerodynamic point of view. So I think, yeah, it's just as Jolien says, I mean, there's a low pressure area around the cockpit as well, which sort of helps the rain stay off it, so there's not much air going in there, if you like, so it's just going over his head, and as you say, you don't get too wet in those cockpits, but it's not particularly pleasant for the drivers. One driver in an Alpine who isn't having a great time is that man, Pierre Gasly. He has used up his final set of power unit components for the entire season as of today.
As always, just dangerous for the Ferraris all the time. As always, just dangerous for the Ferraris all the time. Just stopped it in the middle of the chicane.
Yeah, copy, that's Sainz.
This has got the makings of a classic Formula 1 qualifying Saturday. Hulkenberg going round. He took his only pole position in Formula 1 in mixed conditions. Taking it for the Williams team, the Brazilian Grand Prix. He is fastest of anyone through the first sector and the second sector. Track getting ever faster all the time. Drivers have been warned that there is more rain incoming, so they've got to balance pushing on here. As Hulkenberg goes fastest in the Haas by 0.3 of a second. So Gasly's at the limit of his components now.
Yeah, that means he's basically going to take penalties later in the season. If he has any problem with power unit, either has to go to an old one, well, he's blown some up, so he doesn't have so many of them on the shelf, or he's just going to have to take a grid penalty later in the season. That's pretty much certain. Interestingly, Nico Hulkenberg didn't take a new power unit today, so he must have gone to an old one he had on the shelf.
Not slowing him down for the moment. He's done the most laps of anyone, him and K-Mag. Team laps on the board. The Haas cars were straight out on the green light, weren't they? 21 minutes ago, and they've basically just been pounding around since then with a brief part into the pits for a change of tyres. Charles Leclerc through the final corner. Fairly neat and tidy, clambering over those curves, but not as aggressively as we've seen from some others. And the Ferrari